الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمدا صلى الله عليه وسلم قال تعالى يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما ثم أما بعد عباد الله. We still inshallah speaking about the series that proves the authenticity of the Quran and that Islam is the true religion from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is the religion, not one of the religions. Islam is the religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Indeed, the religion of Allah is al-Islam. The religion of Allah is al-Islam. And we believe that this religion is the religion of all prophets. What Islam means, many people when you ask them what Islam means, they'll say peace. This is not the actual meaning of the word. Islam means submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, submission to one God, to submit, to do ibadah, to worship one God. This is the meaning of Islam. And one of the things that Islam encourages us to do is to spread peace. This is right, but this is not the word, this is not the meaning of the word Islam. Anyway, let's go back to our topic. So Islam is the true religion from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are in this series, inshallah, we'll try to prove it with the easiest way. Last khutbah, we gave very important introduction about how to deal with the scientific miracles in the Quran. Or, in other words, do we need science to prove that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? And we spoke about this in some details. And in short, we said we don't need it in the first place. We don't need science to prove the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, we can give da'wah to others through the science because they believe in it. So we believe in it also. We believe in science, we believe in the facts of science. But this is not, it doesn't give us, the proof that, okay, Islam is the truth because science said. No, we don't need this. But at the same time, can science increase our certainty? Can science increase our iman, our faith? No problem. Whenever there is a new discovery that you will find the Quran spoke about it already, it will increase your faith. Alhamdulillah, I'm on the right way. But the vice versa is not there. If science discovers something against the Quran, our belief is comfortably will say there is something wrong with them. They will discover later on that they were mistaken. And we spoke about the example of, they said, the universe is azali, the universe is always there. The scientists, they believe in this, then they come later on and they say, no, actually the universe comes to existence after it wasn't there. So we gave this example, and the examples are many. Today we mentioned some very funny examples about these things. So this was the first introduction. The second introduction, let us mention what Ibn Hajar said, very powerful statement. Then we'll speak about the environment of science at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's very important. But let us see what Ibn Hajar rahimahullah said. He said this, 7 centuries ago, before 700 centuries ago, or 7 centuries ago, yes. He said, a new evidence will be discovered in the Quran with each era that proves for the authenticity of its message. In our time today, like people believe in science, we will have something related to this in the Quran. In another time, people will believe in something else, they will find the daleel, they will find the proof that convince them that the Quran is the truth, whatever they believe. So in our time, for example, science, you will find something related in the Quran. Before this, they will believe in something like al-aql, logic thing, you will find something in the Quran. You will guide you in the Quran. So new evidence will be discovered in the Quran within each era that proves for the authenticity of the Quran. Just before the occurrence, of the hour of resurrection, a person will show up and discover new evidence that testifies to the validity of this religion that no one has ever discovered before. Even before the Qiyam as-Sa'a, something will happen like this. So proofs for the authenticity of Islam will not be discovered in a single nation exclusively. This is what Ibn Hajar said. He said they will not be discovered in a particular time or a particular nation. There will be evidence in every time, in every single nation, in every place, in every part. There will be a daleel, a proof that convince those people, if they want the truth, they will find it in this religion. This is the meaning, of the statements of Ibn Hajar. If we look into the Quran, as we said in the last khutbah, we will find there are more than 1,000 verses dealing with the issues related to sky, the earth, mountains, plants, rain, clouds. All of them, you will find them in the Quran. If we know that these verses were revealed, sent down to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a primitive environment, an environment full of myths, full of khurafat, full of superstition and pagan perceptions. So those verses are either infallible to date. The verses of the Quran, in the Quran speaks about the scientific things, are either infallible to date, infallible till our time, till the day of judgment. This proves the divine nature of the Quran, that it is really sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or might have been affected by surrounding culture with all its ignorance, with all its khurafat or myths. So, and this is obvious, you will find it obviously in the Quran. If there is something wrong, if there is myth in the Quran, if there is something clearly against some facts, some things, you'll find it clearly in the Quran. It will be very easy to discover that this book is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah made this challenge in the Quran itself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Don't they consider the Quran with care? Don't they reflect? Don't they make tadabbur to this Quran? وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ. This is the challenge. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ. Had it been from other than Allah, لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. They would surely have found therein much contradiction. You will find in the Quran much contradiction if it is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a clear challenge. This is clear challenge in the Quran. So ponder in the Quran, make tadabbur to the Quran, and you will find many contradictions if it wasn't from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if it was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will find no contradiction, which is the case with the Quran. So the challenge, is as simple as this. Anyone who reads the Quran, then looked into our contemporary scientific knowledge, will surely know if that book is sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or invented by a man who lived in that era. The era of prophethood. The era of prophethood, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent down. Let us take, some examples. Some examples of the scientific, the scientific things or the scientific thoughts at that time. For example, Aristotle, one of the greatest scholars, one of the greatest scientists at that time. So Aristotle thought that the brain was a radiator. What he said, he thought that the brain was a radiator that cools down the blood, while the heart heats the blood. This is what he believed. He neither knew nervous and feeling centers. He didn't know anything of that. Rather, Aristotle imagined that the number of man's teeth isn't the same as woman's teeth. Such was the culture of that time. This is the culture of that time. We have to think, as those people at that time, they will think this way. And they will believe that this man, Aristotle, is the greatest man in this field, the field of science. So can you imagine if such information was mentioned in the Noble Quran or the Prophetic Sunnah? We would surely say this is not from Allah. But there's nothing like this in the Quran or in Al-Hadith al-Sahih. Also Aristotle thought that when the womb grows up, it becomes a snake. Yeah, this is what he thought. The one who was meant to be the biggest scientist, which is, at that time Aristotle, the Aristotelian culture was the most common, one in the Middle East. It was the most common culture in the world till the 16th century. Also, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, who was the greatest doctor at that time, thought that the embryo is being formed as a result of moisture, moist heat and fire. He even thought that embryo emerges at the beginning as a piece of meat. And then, that piece of meat heats up inside the womb. As a result of that heating, bones emerge. Subhanallah. Bones emerge after heating up that piece of meat inside the womb. This is what Hippocrates, one of the greatest doctors at the time, said. This is what he believed. Again, imagine if we have something like this in the Quran or in the authentic hadith. This like this khurafat, these myths. Imagine that we have something like this. Also, Galen, another example, one of the greatest doctors at that time, and also the students of Hippocrates. He imagined that bones, nerves, veins, and membranes are drawn out from the semen. Also, while soft tissues are drawn out from feminine ejaculation. So that's what Galen wrote in his book, the book called On Semen. This is the culture of the time. This is the environment of the era of the prophethood. This is the environment of science when the Prophet ﷺ was sent to mankind. Have you find anything in this, like these examples in the Quran? As we said, the Quran dealt with many things, more than 1,000 verses speaks about, like we said, scientific issues. You will never find such a mistake. And every single book, and this is another challenge made by many scholars, many Muslim scholars. Any book of science, just 200 years before, you will read it now, you will find many khurafat, many myths inside that book. Not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. We gave an example last Friday with Darwin. One of Charles Darwin, one of the biggest mistakes he said about himself. One of the biggest mistakes, or the biggest mistake in my life, that I believe that the universe always exists. So this is just some centuries ago. So, subhanAllah, when you see that the Quran comes in that environment, this is very important introduction before we speak about the scientific miracles in the Quran, the scientific verses in the Quran or in the Sahih Sunnah. We have to know. First thing we have to know, the first introduction, do we need science to prove the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? We spoke about it in the last khutbah. In this khutbah, we gave few examples just to know the environment surrounded the Prophet ﷺ, surrounded the people at that time, full of myths, full of khurafat, full of hocus and pocus. But the Prophet ﷺ